So, what are congruent angles? So, two angles are congruent angles when they have the same measure. So, let me go over here to the sidebar and let's kind of talk about that for a second. Okay, so in the past, we talked about segments, right? We talked about congruent segments. And I want to refresh your memory on congruent segments. When we talked about congruent segments, let's say we had this segment A, B, and then this segment C, D, right? And so we said that two segments were congruent if their lengths were equal. So we could say that segment AB was congruent to segment CD, right? That's how we would use congruent for segments. But if they're congruent, then their lengths would be equal. And so if I didn't put anything over AB and CD, then that meant that the lengths were equal, right? Well, the same concept works for congruent angles. So if I'm talking about congruent angles, right? So let's say I have this angle and this angle, and I'm going to call this one, actually, I'm just going to call this, okay, so I'm going to call this one, oops. We're going to call this one angle A and this one angle B, just so I can save myself some time. Okay, so then I can say angle A is congruent to angle B because these are two objects that are congruent. So if the angles are congruent, then that means that the measure of angle A is equal to the measure of angle B. So the actual angles are congruent, but their measures are equal. Same concept like when you're talking about congruent segments. Now, when we want to show that two segments are congruent, we would put the two little marks, and most of the time they're red, but sometimes they're not. Same thing with angles. If they're congruent, then you would put the little angle measure thing in the inside to know that they are congruent. Okay, so congruent angles and segments work the same way, and I wanted just to make sure that you understood that, to understand that the same concept with congruent and equal work for both segments and angles. So then we're going to go to card number 15. So card number 15 is the angle addition postulate, and it says if P is in the interior of angle RST. So we just recently defined interior, so now we can use that to know the location of interior. Then the measure of angle RST, so the measure of this whole thing, RST, is going to be equal to the sum of the measures of angle RSP and angle PST. So just like segment addition postulate, now we're looking at angle addition postulate. And I probably should have used the same colors that are over here. So let me go back and do that so that there's no confusion, because I want to make sure that you understand. So we have angle RST, which is the whole thing, and it's going to be congruent to RSP and PST. So there you go, to make sure that you can see that. All right, so now let's look at some examples. So example number 3 says that given the measure of angle LKN is equal to 145 degrees, find the measure of LKM and the measure of angle MKN. So the one thing that is not on our picture is that the measure of LKN. So we're going to go ahead and make that mark and say that that's going to be equal to 145 degrees. Okay, so we can use angle addition postulate. And angle addition postulate says that the measure of angle LKN is going to be equal to the measure of angle LKM plus the measure of angle MKN. So when I look at that, then I know that the whole thing is going to be equal to this angle on the left plus this angle on the right. And so now I can fill those values in. So 145 let's see, wrong color. 145 is equal to 2x plus 10 plus 4x minus 3. And because it's addition, we don't need to put parentheses, so we're good there. Now we're just going to go through and do the math. So I have 2x and 4x, which give me 6x, and 10 minus 3, which gives me 7. So that means that 145 is equal to 6x plus 7. I'm then going to subtract 7 from both sides. So that's going to be 138 is equal to 6x. And then I'm going to divide both sides by 6. And so 138 divided by 6 is 23. And that is equal to x. So I have found the value of x. But am I done? No, I'm not done, because the question says find the measure of LKM and the measure of MKN. So I have to find those measures now. So I know that the measure of angle LKM is equal to 2x plus 10. And so that's going to be 2 times 23 plus 10, which is 46 plus 10. So the measure of angle LKM is equal to 56 degrees. Then I know that the measure of angle MKN is equal to 4x minus 3. So that's going to be 4 times 23 minus 3. And so then that's going to be 92 minus 3. So the measure of angle MKN is equal to 89 degrees. So I have my two angles. And if I want to check to make sure that I'm accurate, then I could do 56 plus 89. And that's going to give me 145, which we know is LKN. So I did it correctly.